Laissez-faire capitalism ruled the day during the beginning of the United States' immaculate Industrial Revolution. In this atmosphere of unbridled money-making, numerous types of business organizations gave birth to big business. Were the leaders of these companies captains of industry or robber barons? From Vanderbilt's ruthless business practices of wiping out his competition to earn large profits, to Carnegie's generous giving of money to charities and the community which raised him, the Gilded Age business boom gave rise to monopoly while also funding for a surge in philanthropy. During the late 19th century, the concept of hands-off government without intervention in business affairs, overall economic activities, the regulation of wages or child labor laws, otherwise known as laissez-faire capitalism, was the ruling ideal. Under this ideal, corporate personhood, or the idea that a corporation could be viewed as a person, was frequently used as big business and industrial corporations began to rise again. Protected under due process, monopolies rose to power. The rise of monopolies led to the rising of the concept of social Darwinism, based on Charles Darwin's Origin of the Species and theory of social evolution. The idea of individual competition and survival of the fittest in social and business terms became a popular way of thinking. Developed and coined by the British philosopher Herbert Spencer, social Darwinism theorized that character was genetic. Horatio Alger's concept of rags to riches and the idea that the poor could overcome their hardships and rise out of poverty to make something of themselves soared in popularity during the Gilded Age. The social atmosphere created by the laissez-faire capitalism and social Darwinism ideals were incorporated into major forms of business organizations. At the heart of these corporations were the monopolies. The owners had complete control of a market on a good or a service. John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company was a massive monopoly. Rockefeller bought out all other oil companies to form his single business. Through horizontal organization business, Rockefeller also controlled specific parts of production to ensure locked prices. By maintaining his monopoly, Rockefeller had complete control over all oil production, distribution, and use. Other forms of business organizations included pools and trusts. Pools, which were made illegal in the 1880s, were mainly used by the railroad tycoons as a way of dividing sales and fixing prices. Trusts were loopholes used to eliminate competition and made corporations a complex and mysterious web of authority, making it nearly impervious to public scrutiny. A pool organization was used by Cornelius Vanderbilt as he rose from a steamboat captain to one of the richest railroad tycoons in America. His ruthless ways of business eliminated much of his competition, as well as gaining him many enemies. Vanderbilt had taken over the railroad industry by the 1870s. Another common business organization was the Interlocking Directorate, used by J.P. Morgan as he merged many corporations, including Carnegie Steel, becoming the executive of U.S. Steel, the world's first billion-dollar corporation. Final popular form of business organization was vertical organization used by Carnegie Steel. Andrew Carnegie exemplified the true meaning of rags to riches, coming from working as a child laborer in a button factory to becoming one of the wealthiest men in America through building up his massive corporation in steel. Carnegie, before he sold his corporation to the banker J.P. Morgan, spread control of his product to every part of production. he came to control the mining, refining, distribution, and even the use of steel in the railroads. The Gilded Age was not just a time of laissez-faire capitalism and monopoly, but it was also a time of philanthropy. One of the greatest philanthropists of the time was Andrew Carnegie. After selling Carnegie's steel, he devoted the rest of his life to philanthropy. In 1889, he penned his famous essay, The Gospel of Wealth. In his essay, he stated that the rich had a duty to help the less fortunate. The rich have a moral obligation to distribute their money in ways that promote the welfare and happiness of the common man. Coming from poverty himself, Carnegie fully believed in giving back to the community. The duty of the man of wealth is to act as mere agent and trustee for his poorer brethren, bringing to their service his superior wisdom, experience, and ability to administer, doing for them better than they would or could do for themselves. Andrew Carnegie not only believed that he should help the lower class, but that all rich men should. It was simply a matter of morale and character, nothing else. The man who dies thus rich dies disgraced. Many questioned the morality of the Gilded Age and its laissez-faire capitalist government. Monopolies were brought into question, and the question of workers' welfare became a very controversial debate. Monopolies were viewed as a form of dictatorship. The men who ran these companies considered themselves entrepreneurs. However, they came to have complete control over their respective fields. J.P. Morgan, being one of the most powerful bankers of all time, organized U.S. Steel, the world's first billion-dollar corporation. He was worth about $42 billion when he passed away. Cornelius Vanderbilt ruthlessly controlled thousands of miles of railroads by the 1870s, and he died at an estimated worth of $185 billion. After selling Carnegie Steel, his enormous steel empire, Andrew Carnegie was worth a net worth of $310 billion after spending a good deal of his life devoting money to philanthropy. John D. Rockefeller, through completely controlling the producing, selling, and using of oil by way of his Standard Oil Company, had a fortune of $340 billion at the time of his demise. The net worth of these men speaks for itself. One cannot make that kind of money without making some enemies first. Money and power are almost always incorporated with actions of questionable legality. Were the champions of big business benevolent captains of industry or robber barons? The answer is never so simple. It is asked how the champions of big business could be both philanthropic and yet so diabolically unconcerned with the welfare of their workers. Some say that philanthropy was another business scheme, a way of purchasing social acceptance. The theory says that philanthropy was necessary, even required to maintain a position of influence. If Rockefeller or Carnegie didn't give lavishly to the public, the harsh environment of their workers and the absolute control of their markets would have been under heavy public scrutiny. Climbing to the top of business during the Gilded Age required generosity and genius, yet had an added requirement for ruthlessness.